All right, everybody, so this is the deck that we have been talking about quite a bit on the Insiders group. This is the Hope and Love deck from Series 2. So I actually have a really good time running Hope and Love. My deck from set 1 was Hope and Love. Again, Nathaniel still really likes running Faith, so he has basically run a consistent Faith deck through both sets so far. But I do have a good time with the Hope and the Love. So I run Sadie as my Truth Seeker because once per turn I get to search for a level 1 Animo and put it directly into my small group. So she actually gets around Zapper King in that way. So I really like running her, and especially if you run her at the right time during your setup phase, is pretty great. She also gives me that hope power right off the bat because a lot of my cards do search for love power, but she goes ahead and gives me that hope power right off the bat, which is extremely helpful, especially early game. So I run 3 love because, again, I do get to draw into these quite a bit. So I run 3 of those. I run 3 hope. And again, there's only certain cards that actually search for hope power. And so I try to get as much as possible early on in the game because it's just a little bit easier. And then just in case I'm not able to search into those like I would like to, I run prayer because it can be anything that I need it to be. So that is, again, super helpful to run those. So I have those 9 power cards that I run. My deck goes around, well, I like dinosaurs. So this deck is largely surrounded by the dinosaur theme for the Hope and the Love. So I have my Conquersaur Ultra, and then I also run the Agapesaur Ultra and certain ones of those. So this one is one of my big plays that I play. He is a 3 for 14, but I have to shuffle some back into my deck. But I will talk about that a little bit later. I run 2 of the regular Conquersaur, level 1 and level 2s. I try to never run Conquersaur level 1 just by himself unless I just absolutely need the points, because he has to put one back into my deck, whereas Conquersaur level 2 does not. Again, he's also just bigger as well. I really like running Profess Hair. He is probably one of the strongest cards that I have in my deck at the moment. His action is that I get to search for 2 level 1 Animo and put them directly into my small group during my score phase. And so he is pretty great. If I'm just really, really wanting to have extra power, things like that, I am able to use him and then go and search for small one-offs or a bigger level 1 that I'm able to play. So Profess Hair is pretty great. However, again, he does put those hope back into my deck. I run 2 sets of Oincome. Oincome is pretty fantastic, especially when you're using it with Profess Hair, because Oincome level 2, he gets me 2 hope power from my deck and puts them directly into my power pool, again, during my score phase. And so if you set it up just right with the things that you're needing to, you can play both of these cards in the same turn and just get a whole bunch of points. So I really like running that, and I will, again, talk about that a little bit more later. I like running Hairball. I run 3 of these Hairball from the set 1 because he is number 1, he's free, and I like free things, and he also searches for a power card. And he does not say specifically if it's a love or hope, so I can go grab my prayer with him. So again, I run 3 of those. He is also really good to run the combos that I like to run as well. I also run Squibble. Squibble's pretty great. He may be small, but I mainly use Squibble for the fellowship bonus because then he's a 2 for 7. And so I just find that to be a lot more fair than just a 2 for 4. But again, I like running my fellowship bonus. Squibble also defeats Zapper King Mega. So he's also pretty great to run in my deck as well for that factor as well. Then I move on to some of my love. I run 3 Fairly because Fairly, the ability on Fairly is pretty great. I can basically run this with anything and go ahead and get that fellowship bonus. And so I also run Fairly because Fairly defeats the regular Zapper King. But a lot of times I don't run into that at the same time, but I do use it for the fellowship bonus. So a 2 for 8 is extremely fair, and I am able to also run them both together if I really wanted to. So this one is a pretty good one to, again, run with the combos that I like to run with. I also run 3 Fondly, again, kind of for that same reason. Mainly this one I like to run for the fellowship bonus alone, just because it's, again, a 2 for 8, which is great. It's also just 1 love and 1 anything. And so if I'm just not running them in power, or if I don't have the power that I need to at the time, I can use my hope and my love power to both run Fondly. And so I use Fondly quite a bit for the fellowship bonus itself. I run 2 Muyu. Muyu, again, I like because, frankly, Muyu is actually just really cute, but also that fellowship bonus. So this deck largely focuses on the fellowship bonus and the really big dinosaurs. I run 1 Akindleo, mainly for the ability. As long as this card is in my small group, my opponent may not reveal any Mega Cinis. So Nathaniel really likes running those Mega Cinis, and so this one is pretty great for that fact alone, but also I just like Akindleo. Again, he's that cute little dinosaur that I like to run, and oftentimes this extra 5 points has gotten me what I've needed to. Or if I really need to, I can have him out there to just keep his ability out there. And then if I need to exchange him for a different Animo, I can. And speaking of, one of my one-off cards that I like to run, again, is Servitude, specifically for the draw power that Servitude gives me. Now, I do run a lot of love, so sometimes his draw power is not the greatest, because I can only draw for as many cards that are not love cards in my small group. So a lot of times what I will do is I will lay down cards that I may potentially be exchanging cards in my hand, but I will use him for the draw power first and then go exchange my cards. And also he's just a pretty great card. He's a 3 for 8. And there have been times that has won me the game as well. So I really do like running Servitude, but mainly for that draw power. Potpourris I really like because the ability, that is the largest reason why I run this one, because it negates any of the actions on Cinis. So that can be extremely helpful, and that's regardless of when I actually put this out there. So I like having this one in my small group if I need it. I run 2 Opalus from step 1 because, again, this gets me my love power that I need. So with Sadie being a hope power, if I can run into this early game, I am able to go ahead and go get my love power. Now, the great thing about Opalus is a level 1. So if I really need that love power early on, I can use Sadie's ability, go grab my Opalus, and then put it into my small group, and then use the offering and go get my love power for something else. So I run 2 of those for that reason. I then run 2 copies of Agapesaur, both level 1 and 2. So level 1 Agapesaur is pretty great because if I really need to use the ability, I can. A lot of times I'm not actually using that ability. I am just waiting to turn it into Agapesaur level 2. Agapesaur level 2, well, the ability on this one is pretty great because it's now the weakness for any Cini that's out there. So I really like running this. A lot of times I'm not running it necessarily for the ability to defeat the Cinis with the verse, but I do run it because it's a 2 for 10, which I, again, enjoy having less power for more bang for my buck, basically. So this one is a pretty good one to run. And also, too, with Sadie's ability, if I run into my level 2, I can go get my level 1 if I need to, and I can grow them whenever I'm able to do so. My second Ultra that I run in the deck is Dinosaur Ultra, because again, this runs around the dinosaurs. So this is my second. It's a 3 for 13. I really enjoy running the Dinosaur and Conquersaur at the same time, because those are just really fun to run together. And that's basically what my deck runs around. I only actually have one universal card in my deck, and that is Fondly, because I run the 3 level 1 Fondlies. But this is also a 2 for 10 of anything. So again, if my power is not quite running out to be the way that I need it to run one of my bigger, cards or something like that, this is 2 of anything, and I can just use it as a 2 for 10. So that is why I run Fondly. Eventually, I will probably put more copies of this one in there, but at the moment, I just run the 1. My Cinnies that I run are Croggle, because the ability mainly. Again, this one is what I consider a smaller Cinny, but the ability is what really makes it good for me. As long as this is in my opponent's active Cinny, they may not retrieve anything from their discard pile. Because again, Nathaniel likes to run Faith, which he is always pulling things from his discard pile. So I really like running Croggle for that reason. Scawfish, again, is the same thing. So Scawfish, they cannot activate any Faith Animo. So again, he is, I feel like, a smaller one, but he actually, it really slows down Nathaniel's game. So I try to run especially these 2 Cinnies in just about any deck that I'm running right now. I run the Grasshopper because he is bigger, but also he, I forgot what he said. Select 1 card and have him shuffle it back into their deck. So what I like to do is I like to just see what he has in hand, and just I can usually have an idea of what he's got, just depending on where we're at in the game and how often he's pulling things from his discard pile, or how often he's using cards like Snakebit, things like that. So this one is a great one to kind of hold on to and pull out at any time, and then I'm able to be just like, no, you don't get that card anymore. Zapper King, I get to run kind of for that same reason, because a lot of his Animo are level 1. He doesn't really have a lot of growths that he uses in set 2. And so Zapper King is pretty great because he does not really have the ability to get around Zapper King like my deck does. So again, using someone like Sadie gets right around Zapper King because I'm not playing it from my hand. Things like, trading them with True Blue, or, things like that. I'm not playing them from my hand. And so I'm able to get around Zapper King quite often unless it's super early game. I run Furricane because Furricane gets to put one of his cards back from a small group. And that is pretty fun, especially if I'm noticing that he is trying to set up for one of his big plays. Furricane really throws a wrench in that. Clench as well. He's not able to play story cards, so things like Repent, he's not able to use. He can't use his Snakebit. He can't use some of his other things that he really likes to. Shake and Break, things like that. So I use the set 1 Clench just because he's a little bit bigger. And then my final Mega and Ultra is my Scorch Mega. Again, I like running at least 1 Mega Cinny just because they're bigger. I like them, and it kind of just evens everything out, especially closer to the end of the game, because this slows down his points quite a bit. And then I come to my story cards. I run a Snakebit. Just in case I'm not running into things the way that I need to, I can go and forfeit my score phase, and I can go get the cards that I really need to set up my gameplay. Oftentimes with this deck, however, I'm finding that I don't need to use this because I do have that draw power with my other cards, especially with things like Sadie and Servitude and things like that. So I'm not necessarily needing to run into that. So I will typically discard this one, but it is really nice to have in case I need it. I do, however, seem to have a problem drawing into my Cinnies when I need to, especially with his game being so fierce. I often will go use my accountability story card from set 1, and I will go search my deck for a Cinny that I need and play it on him. Typically, it'll be Croggle or Scrawfish or something like that. So this one is a really good card to have if you're not drawing into your Cinnies and you're noticing that you're not drawing into your Cinnies. I don't carry that many Cinnies in this deck because I like having the other cards there. So this one helps get around that fact that I'm just not running into them every time I draw. I do run a Repent in this deck because Repent is pretty great, especially if I have the ability to go out and send out, Oincome and Profess Hair on the same turn, something like that. I can just go ahead and just get all of those points instead. One thing that's also really fun to do is, let's say he throws out one of his Mega Cinnies, and I just don't have quite enough points to defeat it completely. Let's say he throws out a 16 and I'm only at 15 points, using a fellowship bonus or something. I will leave that out there, and then my next turn, I will repent of that Cinny and then throw out as many cards as I possibly can to get as many points as I possibly can in a single turn. So repent is pretty great for that. This deck runs a lot on some of these smaller growths, the level 1s and level 2s. So I really like using the Sycamore Tree to just go and get my growths. I mean, they're pretty great. Again, this is from set 1. And so I get to search for any of the growths that I'm looking for. And especially using Sycamore Tree along with Sadie is pretty great because if I have this in hand, I can just go basically search for any growth that I want. A lot of times that'll be either like Oincome or that will be like my Agapesaur. And I'll use Sadie's ability and then I'll use this one and I can put those directly in there. Empty Tomb is kind of that same fashion because I get to go search for an Animo it's from my discard pile. And I really like doing that because I can also use this in a turn when I'm setting up one of my big phases. Again, line in the sand because this card is really great against Nathaniel's deck. It's extremely rude, and I love that because I like to play more of a control type game, whereas he's just, throw out as many things as big as possible early on. And this kind of eliminates that possibility for him. Also, line in the sand gets it to where I can put a lot of my cards back into my deck and draw into them again using Sadie or the other things that I'm using. I also use the Staff of Moses because, again, I have a lot of hope. And so this actually just eliminates one of the hope power needed to run some of my cards. So hope, I really like running this because hope a lot of times will remove, the hope from your power pool. So this is super helpful. I also use this one with certain other combos that just make it even more rude, and I really enjoy that. I will probably eventually put more of these in my deck, but for the moment I just run the one. And my last equipment is, again, the Breastplate of Righteousness because it turns my hope into anything or anything into hope. So depending on how I'm running into my power, this is super helpful to put on certain cards, especially like my bigger love cards. Things like Servitude if I really needed to use him. I could even put him on my Ultras. I could put him here if I really needed to and get the cards that I'm needing at the right time to play them to get the biggest amount of points against fighting a Cinny. So one of the best things that I like about my deck is, again, running those fellowship bonuses. I just really like running the fellowship especially because these work so well together, and usually the fellowship bonuses are very evenly matched with their pricing, with the power. So I like having quite a few fellowships in there because if I'm running a whole bunch of cards in one turn, especially if I'm using Repent or something like that, I'm just getting more points for the power that I have. So it's utilizing my power in the best way possible. Again, running the Oincome, in the same turn as the Professor. As long as I have my power correct, and I'm using it in the right way, I can really get a lot of cool stuff out of this. I usually will tend to use my Professor, and when I do go put my level 1s in there, I like to try and go for like my free ones, so that way I'm using what I need to get everything that I need at the right time. And usually a lot of times that gives me the power that I need at the right time. And then one of the most fun plays is throwing out both of my ultras at the same time. That's just fun because they're both very big and they're both really big dinosaurs, which again, this deck runs largely around the dinosaurs. And I like throwing them both out together because really it just kind of looks cool, frankly. So again, this is a 60 card deck. So if I were to remove anything to add some other stuff in there, I would have to remove cards. Eventually I will probably put more equipment in here. And I will probably take out some of my smaller level 1s, probably the 3 Fondlies. I'd probably go down to maybe 1 or 2. But I probably won't get rid of any of my growths in this deck, just due to the fact that I don't run very many of them and they are all very necessary for me. But yeah, so that is the Hope and Love deck.